let me just thank you, first of all, for agreeing to take some time.
Yeah.
And I'll just set the stage a bit
How,
here.
let
So,
me ask, how did you get the Shepherd Ferry poster? And
exactly. So I reached out directly to his, his group. I went to the website,
oh,
submitted an inquiry, and said that, hey, I'm a pathologist and I have this philanthropic adventure where I am looking to raise money for cervical and breast cancer screening.
right.
And I'd like to uh, perhaps buy, if I could, the print. And I was planning on getting the book as well. And if I could tie it into an interview with you that we could post on YouTube and raise a little bit of buzz and put these two items up for auction on Charity Buzz.
Yeah.
And surprising, uh, the Shepherd Ferries folks got back to me and said, where do you want it to ship?
Yeah, they're
And
they're good people.
yeah, they really are. And I wanted to talk to you about your work with them. So this here is a signed print. Both you and Shepard signed it.
Oh, good, good.
It's going to go to the high bidder, along with a signed copy of the Seekers, which we'll get into. Um, Actually, if I can share my screen, I'll show the folks at home a picture of you signing this. If, let's
Mm.
see. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's you and Shepard. And tell me about the relationship there.
Yeah, it's signing during the time of COVID. um, all right, so let's see. Shepard did the cover of my first book. No, my second book. Sorry, I have three. Um, the Doors Unhinged, and just like this one, he just captured everything inside the book in one image on the front.
Yeah.
This one, he said, all these people you write about, I want to kind of somehow give the uh, visual that they're part of your DNA. And so, see, he's got them sort of coming in and out of me around my head.
Right.
So, I mean, that's really beautiful idea because the whole book is it's my tip of the hat to all these musicians that have fed me artistically.
Right.
And so I'm kind of like on their shoulders or they're in my DNA.
Exactly. I love the print. It's vibrant, it's colorful, and it's really classic Shepherd Ferry style for
Yeah.
enthusiasts out there who collect Shepherd. This is a limited print. It's exclusive, signed by the both of you. There's not too many of them out there.
Not too many.
So I went ahead, I ordered the book. You had done an online signing. I bought one of those, and that's what we have right up next to it. And so all the listeners out there, stay tuned. You're going to hear some great stories from John. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about how you can get these two copies if you're the high bidder. And the money that we raise is going to go towards the College American Pathologists Foundation. I'm a pathologist here in Boston, and what we do is we put on clinics across the U.S. To reach out to underserved women who sometimes haven't seen doctors in decades.
Wow.
And we offer them a one-day experience on a weekend where they will come in, have an exam by a gynecologist, have a pap smear. Some of them have never had a pap smear. They'll
Mm.
also get a mammogram. And again, many of them have never even had a mammogram. And we discover a lot of cancers, a lot of abnormalities, and in so doing, save lives
Mm.
and get them hooked into the system. Otherwise, they would have never sought out medical care. So the money we raise here is going to be put to really, really good use.
Yeah,
Um,
well, thank you for all that good altruistic work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And again, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I just finished the book 2 nights ago. I love it. I can say that even if you're not a music fan, if you don't even know half the people you talk about in there, you're going to take away something, because what I love about your style is each chapter is a teachable moment. And that's something I think everybody can relate to. Whatever your profession is, we're always learning. We're learning every day. Me as a pathologist, I know I see new diseases every day. I learn something new from each patient. And I think that's something the reader can take away from each chapter of your novel
Well, yeah, it's not a novel,
or
it's
book. Sorry.
nonfiction. Um, to your point, yeah, we're all seekers in one way or another. And there's a few people in this book I've written about that are not on the tip of everyone's tongue, but they're still people who fed me artistically. And so I really got something from them. So I'm trying to give back. Plus, I also am trying to say that, yeah, these people are icons, but you too can paint or play piano in a closet and no one hears it, but you're still entering the same zone that all these artists go into. And it's a good healing kind of thing to do. It's like a meditation. And these stressful times, anything to be calm is a good thing.
Absolutely. And right about your point about something for everything, I'm going to read as we go along here. I picked out a couple of quotes that I thought were really great that
Okay.
really resonated with me. So the first one here, if the universe is composed of sonic vibrations, music can help you understand the world and your place in it. I love that.
Yeah, well, it's a little cosmic, but you know, musicians hear the world. Painters and artists, they see the world. It's their primary thing. And according to astrophysicists, uh, it, the first sound in the Bible, the word, well, that's a vibration. It's a sound.
Right.
You know, so if that's what's going on, then there's power in sound, isn't there? Or silence. I write a lot about silence
Oh
too.
yeah, we're going to get into that too. That's
You know,
another.
the point being that if it's all sound, there's no contrast. And so silence is very important.
Absolutely.
I forgot your question.
Uh,
Oh, you quoted the sonic
yeah,
thing.
the sonic vibrations. So another strong theme that runs throughout the book, and I gather from your life, the way you live your life, is spirituality. And that's something everyone can relate to, whether they're a musician or uh, a salesman, they sit in front of a computer, whatever they do, we all need it, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So spirituality is something that I think is it awakens in us when we read things like this.
Yeah. Well, I do have a couple chapters, one on the Dalai Lama and one on Ram Dass, sort of these spiritual seeker dudes. And, I mean, it's inspiring to read what these guys have to say or how they live their lives as examples of very centered kind of beings. And, maybe a little of it'll rub off.
Right, right. In fact, here's another quote I found that maybe you can speak about. Uh, so this was said to you: this religious system has to do with the awakening of your nature, and that's the one that your art, he retorted, pointing at me, is operating on.
All right. Well, that was Joseph Campbell, as
Yep.
a world-renowned mythologist. He inspired George Lucas to write Star Wars stuff after he read Joseph Campbell. And I was on a panel with him, and he was taken to a Grateful Dead concert, and he'd never been to any rock and roll concert, and he said there is something going on here. Maybe this is the best answer to the atomic bomb. In other
Wow.
words, the sense of community, you know. And so I, I don't think Campbell knew how inebriated all those deadheads were, but you know, he saw it as a Dionysian festival rite, you
Right.
know, kind of mythologically, and yeah, that's kind of, you know, you think about Woodstock, and there's 500,000 people there, and nobody got hurt, and everybody pretty much got along. That's a good metaphor.
Absolutely. Another theme that comes up frequently in your book is improvisation. And I know that's an important skill that musicians need. And I think it's something that you have learned through jazz, which is uh, really critical to playing well. But that's another theme I think that resonates with everybody. Don't have to
Yeah.
be a musician to
Yeah.
appreciate improv and how it can make life better.
Yeah, well, in jazz, boy, 50% of it is improv. You know, you're still playing the melody, but then you take a solo and you go off. You have to stick with the chords, but you go off on your own tangent, whatever comes into your head. And it's a good rehearsal for life because, you know, we make all these plans. In other words, we have the chord structure. Uh, but then, you know, you reach 35 and you realize, oh, wait a minute. I've had my ladder leaning against the wrong wall. I want to change occupations. Oh my God. Well, that's kind of improv. You
Mhm.
got to kind of be open to looking at other ways of doing things, and that's what improv teaches.
Right.
And as we get older, um, yielding is kind of an important, you know, things get taken away, and you got to improvise and figure out how to kind of get along. I'm not saying I know how to do all this. I'm trying to learn this. We're all seekers.
Absolutely. That's another theme that came out really nicely, especially in your conclusion that you wrote about how we're all seekers. Uh, the space between the notes you also write a lot about, and you touched on that earlier about just as important as the sounds of music are also the sounds of silence. And there's another great quote here. um, I think it's also in the Joseph Campbell chapter. My life has been full of sound, and as I've gotten older, the sound of silence has become more appealing.
Yeah, most non-musicians probably don't know this, but well, if you look at musical notation, it's really just a bunch of math. It's a bunch of numbers on the page, and musical note, you know, 4 4 3 4, and all this stuff. What turns it into music is the feeling you put in between the numbers, and that's the space in between the notes. It's really minuscule, but it's really important, especially to drummers, because if the space between one beat and the next beat is big, and there's enough room to emphasize the feel on the front of the beat, and that will come out kind of like military or polka, or and if you wait to the last second to play the next beat, that will be like the blues. You'll be waiting for the sadness to come in between each note. It's kind of, so that's how subtle silence and sound is, and they're married. And yeah, it's something people don't think about that much. But I thought about it a lot when I watched the conductor of the L.A. Philharmonic, Gustavo Dudamel. He's a young, incredible guy, and he would conduct Beethoven for 20 minutes, a lot of sound, and then he'd keep his arms up, you know, so the audience knew, don't applaud yet. For a minute or two, silence. And then he'd put his arms down and you knew it was over. And then you applauded. But in that silence was the deepest uh, after all that sound, I think I have a sentence in his chapter where I say, if you're listening to quality music, and it doesn't matter if it's a symphony or a rock song, it starts out as silence, just like creativity comes out of chaos,
Mhm.
or the Big Bang comes out of the black hole or whatever. I'm getting kind of out there now, but um, well, I lost my train of thought. We can edit this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? That out of the silence comes the sound.
Whether you're listening to rock or symphony.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. So it, first there is silence, and then there is sound, and it doesn't matter if that sound is a symphony orchestra or a rock band. If it's quality sound, then the silence afterwards will be deeper. It'll have more resonance. Even though you're hearing nothing, you're hearing deeper nothing. And it's calming and peaceful and powerful. And so that sounds abstract, but that's the musicians live in the world of sound and no sound.
Yeah. And appreciate the impact of silence too. It's in your chapter on Ram Dass, where you say the silence between the sounds of music makes the music breathe like human beings.
Right.
I think
And
that's a
as a
great quote.
drummer, I learned from listening to classical music that I didn't have the technique of the fastest drummer in the world, but I play dynamically, and classical music has big fortissimo and real quiet pianissimo and everything in between, and that's all the human emotions. So that affected my drumming. Where it's not all one level,
Hmm.
you know. If you have real quiet parts, then the loud parts will be more powerful.
Makes sense. And that's something, it seems like many drummers know that. In fact, you mentioned Ringo Starr giving you some interesting quotes. He said, "It's the emotion you put into your drumming. That's the art.
Yeah.
Uh, Leaving a hole is as important as filling it up."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Michael, is there any parallel in medicine to this line of thought?
You know, I was thinking a lot about that as I read each chapter, thinking, what's the teachable moment for me?
Yeah.
Uh, I consider myself a seeker. As a pathologist, I'm unraveling cells under the microscope and trying
Right.
to put them together in a big picture, uh, making sense out of what looks like chaos.
Right.
And there's silence in
Well,
that for that process of making a diagnosis. Um,
yeah.
but then again, there's also a symphony when you look under the microscope and see the cells and the colors, and they can talk to you. And uh,
That's interesting. So you're
yeah,
researching some pathology, and that's the silent part. And then you figure, well, not figure it all out, but figure a lot of it out. And then you come out of that and write a paper or speak about what you found. And that's the sound part.
right.
Yeah.
There's the silence of putting it together, and then the first chord is the first words on the report. That's the musical notes that we put down.
You know, when I now I'm a writer, um, I have this idea for me anyway that the length of a the length of a sentence is a musical question for me. If it's short, it's kind of percussive,
Hmm.
and if it's long, it's sort of melodic, or it's too long and you better edit, you know. But it's kind of like if I feel stuck, I'll read my paragraph out loud and then I'll know, oh, okay, that fix this or that's great or whatever.
Right, right. I do the same things with my reports and diagnoses. I read them and I think, is this going to put somebody to sleep reading this, or
Right.
uh, keep it short and
Yeah.
percussive? That's
Yeah.
the thing I'm going to remember now.
Yeah. The E. E. Cummings poet said the way to genius is through ruthless editing. That's a little strong, but poetry is so minimal, he's got to be strong, I guess.
Right. And also, I think there's a lot to be said that less is sometimes more,
Oh, yeah.
particularly in my area when another doctor really wants to know what's the bottom line. Don't paint a
Yeah. Yeah.
big, long
Right.
picture
Right.
here. Just tell me what it is. And I get the sense in music, it's the same. In fact, you've got a quote here. Um, One note can be as musical as 100 if it's played where it should be.
Yeah. Well, I learned that as I've gotten older because I don't have the chops or technique as I did in my 20s. But I do know that if I can put something in the really perfect spot, it's really powerful and musical and maybe as strong as all the show off ego stuff of my youth.
Right, right. Um,
I'm wondering if we ought to mention for folks who uh, think maybe this science and the void is a little abstract. The names of some of the people I've written about, just so they. Have you got it there? Can you?
yeah, yeah.
You
I'll go through the contents here. So you start off with your mom,
right,
and then your grade school teacher,
right.
Fred Katz, Elvin Jones.
That's John Coltrane's drummer.
Right, right. And he resonates through a lot of chapters.
Yeah,
And of course, Jim Morrison,
right,
uh, Emil Richards, Lou Reed, Janis Joplin, your other partner, Ray Manzarek,
right,
the other Morrison, Van
right.
Morrison, Ravi Shankar, Patti Smith, Bob Marley. Uh, it takes a second to read his name as Robert Nesta Marley, but
Huh, right.
uh, Airto Moreira,
Ah,
Jerry Lee Lewis, Joseph Campbell, Peggy Fury, Robert Bly, another Morrison, Barbara Morrison,
right.
the Dalai Lama, Gustavo, who you spoke about with the LA Philharmonic, Paul Simon, Ram Dass, and Willie Nelson.
Yeah. So for you readers out there, it's a real eclectic group. You know, Willie, the country great icon, and classical music and rock and roll, Lou Reed, and my mom and reggae. So there might be something in there for everybody. I don't know. But what connects all these people is sound. They all, if you watch Gustavo Dudamel conducting the LA Philharmonic, there's a similarity between him and Bob Marley because Bob Marley also, like Gustavo, is his entire body. He's so possessed in the moment of hearing of the sound that you're hearing that his whole body emanates that sound through playing guitar or conducting the orchestra. So
Right,
there's a connection.
right. And we'd be remiss not to mention the Doors theme resonates throughout the book. You
Yeah.
come back to the band and stories about how you first encountered a lot of these artists and musicians. And I was particularly struck by your metaphors about how you created the bed with which
Oh,
Jim Morrison and Robbie could play on top of.
right. Yeah. Ray Manzarek played the bass with his left hand. And so bass players and drummers are sort of the foundation, the bed of sound. And then on top of that was Robbie's guitar, and on top of that was Jim. And it was a kind of a like Robbie brought flamenco and folk, and Ray had the blues and classical, and I had jazz, and Jim read every book on the planet. So it was this sort of American gumbo. It was this mix that still apparently is quite delicious.
Absolutely. I know it's a dish that I enjoy frequently. There was one sentence that really stuck with me, how you talked about several years down the road when you reconnected with something, it brought you back to the magic that you created in Ray's garage in Venice. And
Yeah.
that's just great imagery for a reader, I think.
Yeah, I didn't think about this, but you're right. The Doors, in the chapter on Ray, I talk about our roots, the very beginning. But through the Doors, we're playing in San Francisco, and in between shows, I run over and I get to hear Janis Joplin, you know. And so, yeah, the Doors are kind of weaved all throughout the whole thing, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to appeal to a lot of folks. I'm sure of that. One thing that I found very interesting is you mentioned that even after all these years, all the auditoriums, coliseums you've played, you'll still get some butterflies in your stomach when you sit down there, and I think that's an important lesson for people, not to get too cocky.
Yeah, if you don't have a little, I mean, you get used to the butterflies. They're much more manageable because you're used to being in front of people. But if you don't have any, then maybe you're kind of phoning it in. Maybe you're doing a Vegas act or something. You're not putting your soul into the moment. And that's why, for me, I have found, I played Madison Square Garden for 12,000 people, but I'll play poetry and drumming in a little club for 12 people, and if they're really listening and I'm really into the material, then I get as much fulfillment out of that as the giant concert.
Wow, wow. Yeah,
It's the road, not the goal, not the size of the audience. It's great to have mass adulation and get, there's a Grammy behind me. I got a Grammy. Um, but to stay vibrant as an artist, if I can still get off on what I'm doing creatively, even though it's the downside of a giant peak, I'm feeling good. It feeds me just like whatever fed us in the beginning to get started.
and I think that's another teachable moment right there is love what you do, and every day go into it with the same vigor that you did on your first day, and you'll always go home happy.
And and uh, if you can only maybe do some creative stuff after your 9 to 5 job, uh, if you can find the time, there's something in there for everybody that's real nurturing. Like music, the arts are medicine for the soul, and so I'm advocating that.
Absolutely. Another great lesson, I think, for folks to remember, especially in these times when arts are getting cut or
I
less
know.
funding. We need to make sure that flourishes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was wonderful to speak with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this video. We'll put it up on YouTube.
So you're going to
And
cut this down a bit or whatever.
yeah, yeah, I think we'll edit it. And we'll put a link on next week, these two items will go up on Charity Buzz.
Okay.
And Charity Buzz is a philanthropic
Yeah.
website. All
Yeah.
of the, yeah, I think you've maybe done
I've
something for
done a
them in the
couple.
past.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the money goes to whatever cause the donor is passionate about. And
Yeah.
as we mentioned at the beginning, the funds we raise here will go towards life-saving cancer screening that's done by pathologists. We're also as we do these clinics, we also bring in more COVID testing.
Oh,
So
good.
that's another timely
Yeah.
topic. Many of these same underrepresented populations don't
Yeah.
have access to testing.
Right.
And we have to end these racial imbalances
Right.
and
Right.
really deliver quality care to everybody. So that's also a passion of pathologists.
That's
Uh,
good. That's kind of the silver lining of the COVID thing. But it's kind of shown a light on that. And the greenhouse gases are down. So, gee, maybe we've got a big footprint on the earth. And let's kind of think about that when we get out of this COVID tunnel.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of lessons that
Yeah.
we're going to be learning and dissecting for many years about things that we did differently and the impact. And some of those are going to stay, I think, and
Yeah.
we'll learn a lot. So thank you again.
Hey,
Um,
Michael, great to talk to you.
nice to talk to you.